Yeah, go ahead.
Is my screen is visible?
Yes.
Okay.
F5.
Yes, sir. Okay. So good afternoon, one and all present here. Myself, Khushi Saxena, and I am from BA Honors Political Science. And I am here to present my topic on women and politics in respect with Hindu Code Bill and status of women in India report. Sources I have taken from my presentation. I have taken from a book, India After Independence by Bipin Chandra. I have taken articles from India Today, Towards Equality 1971, Women and Men in India 2004. I have taken report from there, and a book called India's Future Belongs to Its Women, Aniruddha Datta. Moving ahead towards my objectives. These are the topics I have covered in my presentation, from introduction to timeline and till conclusion. Now I'm moving ahead towards introduction. Before moving towards introduction, I would like to start with a quote by Swami Vivekananda. The best thermometer to the progress of a nation is its treatment for its women. There is no chance for the welfare of the world unless the condition of the woman is improved. So now I'm going to start with the introduction. Dramatic changes have been taken place, whether it is in legal, politics, educational, or social status of women since independence. This was not unexpected since the question of the improvement of position of women had been the heart of the social reform movement. The post-independence India saw women movements across the India in many forms. They vary from Gandhian approach to the radical and communist approach. The forms of oppression are many, but only visible are reported, and that too very little. Like, for example, sexual harassment, rape, domestic violence, but the problem of women, property, inheritance right are least reported. The obstacles in the women's oppression in India are the personal laws in different regions, patriarchal family setup, the caste system, and the colonial rule. Gandhiji believed that women have to play a meaningful role in politics, making it more accountable, transparent, and corruption free. He wrote in his writing in Harijan on 21st April 1946, he emphasized the need to enroll women as voters, impart or have imparted to them practical education, teach them to think independently, release them from the chains of caste that binds them so as to bring about a change in them. If they will do this, they will purify the present unclean atmosphere. Secondly, he prophetically said that as long as women of India do not take part in public life, there can be no salvation for the country. Now, moving ahead towards the timeline of women's achievement in India. This timeline is from 1947 to 2009, respectively. In 1947, on 15 August 1947, following independence, Sarojini Naidu became the governor of United Provinces and in the process became India's first woman governor. On the same day, Amrit Kaur assumed the office as the first female cabinet minister of India in the country's first cabinet. Rukmani Devi Arundel was the first ever woman in Indian history to be nominated a Rajya Sabha speaker member, Sabha member. Then in 1953, Vijaya Lakshmi Pandit became the first woman and first Indian president of the United Nations General Assembly. 1979-59, Anna Chande became the first Indian woman judge of a high court, and that is of Kerala High Court. In 1963, Sucheta Kriplani became the chief minister of Uttar Pradesh, the first woman to hold that position in any Indian state. In 1966, Indira Gandhi, the Iron Lady, became the first woman prime minister of India. Then in 1970, Kamaljeet Sandhu became the first Indian woman to win a gold in Asian Games. In 1972 is known for Kiran Bedi, who becomes the first female recruit to join the Indian Police Service. 1978, Sheila Shri Prakash became the first female and entrepreneur to independently start an architect firm. 1979, considered as a Mother Teresa, wins the Nobel Peace Prize, becoming the first Indian female citizen to do so. 1984, on May 23rd, Bachendri Pal became the first Indian woman to climb Mount Everest. 1989, Justice M. Fatima Bibi became the first woman judge of the Supreme Court of India. Then in 1992, Priya Jighan becomes the first lady to join Indian Army, and in 1999, 31st October, Sonia Gandhi becomes the first female leader of the opposition, the first woman to win Olympic medal, Karnam Maleshwari. In 2007, Pratibha Patil became the first female president of India, and in 2009, 4th June, Meera Kumar became the first female speaker of Lok Sabha. This timeline ये सिर्फ ये शो नहीं करती कि सिर्फ पॉलिटिकल इन्वॉल्वमेंट रहा है वुमेन का. This timeline shows their social, their cultural, and every aspect of women, which involves them in the country. Then moving ahead towards the topic, firstly, I would like to start with the background. Like post independence के बाद जो भी women's की improvement रही है या उन्होंने जो भी work.
Yes, Khushi, 1 minute. So these facts are for all. These facts are only for the information. Nothing relation to this question because this question is India, women and the politics. But that was very interesting that at least you people know because this is the presentation, so you people know about the who was the first amongst all. कौन लोग पहले थे और किसने किया but this is nothing linked when you write about your paper. This is nothing linked to our paper. Why? This is a very interesting debate. Still, we are stuck on one. The first president, the first after independence 17 year, 70, 75 years, this attract criticism also. Kusi, are you getting my point? Okay,
Yes,
still,
sir.
we are pronouncing first. So when we are involved in the serious discussion and debates with the higher standard, this attracts some criticism. Okay, still Karnam Maheshwari is the first. Still Sonia Gandhi was the first leader of opposition. Still this first, that first. So still we are involving in this first the rat race, though the population of male and female in India right now almost equal. So this may attract some criticism by the different corners. So maybe drop when you're writing in our examination. But for here, it is absolutely fine. Good, Khushi, go ahead.
So, although I also believe that yes, this shows criticism,
Yes,
but
yes, yes.
at some point it is the reality, na? So it is also a
Ha,
reality
ha,
we
ha,
are facing.
definitely. Definitely. Go ahead. That means go ahead. That means your PPT.
Okay, sir. So moving ahead towards my topic, firstly, I would like to share some backgrounds जिससे ये भी पता लगता है कि इंडिपेंडेंस से पहले भी ऐसे बहुत सारे मूवमेंट्स या ऐसे बहुत सारे लीडर्स रहे हैं जिन्होंने वुमेन के लाइफ के लिए, वुमेन के इनजस्टिस के लिए वॉइस रेज की है. Like the Indian women's movement started in between the late 18th century and the beginning of 19th century by Raja Ram Mohan Roy. He was a stout champion of women's rights, and most importantly, with the help of him, Sati system was abolished in 1956. Then Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar was a social reformer and a pioneer in establishment of Hindu Widows Remarriage Act 1856. E.V. Ramaswamy is in his self-respect movement in 1925 sought to reform the condition of women in terms of equality, inheritance of right, childbearing, and opposed bigamy. In 1926, Indian women founded a separate organization named AIWC, All India Women Conference. Some of the important members of this organization were Kamala Chattopadhyay and Sarojini Naidu. This wasn't helpful in enactment of and passage of Sharda Act, that is the Child Marriage Restraint Act in 1929, Maternity Benefit Act 1961, and Hindu Code Bill. And it has several members in it and and have 500 branches in India. In the national movement, women emerged as capable of having nationalistic feeling, sacrifice, struggle, and equal to men in these aspects. They defied laws, went to jail, and thus made clear that they could also aspire to get jobs, right to vote, and right to inherit parental property. Then talking about the constitutional provisions, that what constitution has provided for women in India.
Kusi, 10 seconds.
Okay.
So, Kusi, do you think that the pre-independence India, every women issue raised by the man or men? So, behind this purpose, behind this whole exercise, the purpose of all this exercise, because you just reiterated what that Ishwar Chand Vidyasagar, etc., etc., they stood for the women right. So why did happen in pre-colonial India or in colonial India that every important aspect of women raised by the men. Do you have any idea? Do you have any argument about this?
So I it is not that that all the that women haven't raised their voice before independence, but yes, if we compare from pre-independence to post-independence, yes, less women have participated in raising their voice as compared to men at that time.
चलिए ठीक है okay but it needs a lot more study because this is a very pertinent question. We'll be talking about the women question in the pre-modern pre-independent India, because most of the reformers, they were from a different gender, different class, and they raised the question about the women. So this is another good question, and we should look into it in the some another day. Go ahead, thank you, go ahead.
Okay, sir. So now I am moving towards the constitutional provisions that what constitution has provided for women for our country. So adoption of our constitution heralded a new era of equality for women of India. It guarantees equal political right, including the right to vote to women. Also, almost all the provisions contained in the UN Convention on the elimination of all forms of discrimination against women are there in Indian constitution. Not only does the constitution guarantees equal political status to women, there is even a scope for positive discrimination in their favor, as it is evident in Article 15, Part 3 of the Constitution, that there are many other provisions in the Constitution which lay stress on equality between men and women. Article 14 provides for equality before law. Article 39, Part A of the Constitution states that the state shall direct its policy towards securing equally to men and women the right to an adequate means of livelihood. And Article 39D of the Constitution enjoins the state to direct its policy towards securing equal pay for equal work for both men and women. Article 42 of the Constitution provides the securing just and humane condition of work for maternity relief, and Article 51A Part E refers to the fundamental duty of citizens to renounce practice derogatory to the dignity of women. Then talking to the about the representation of women in parliament. So, political representation was initially based on the premise that it deals primarily with individuals. It was believed that though a very few women were actually joining politics at a given time, the overall improvement in terms of education and employment opportunities would necessarily percolate into the political sphere too, and the representation would commensurately increase. During the first general election, only 66 women contested the elections to parliament, and 19 women were elected to the House of People. Jawaharlal Nehru was quite appalled at the low representation of the women in the parliament. Expressing his anguish and pondering over the issue, he wrote thus a letter on the matter to the chief ministers. So this page shows the letter written by Jawaharlal Nehru. I have by Jawaharlal Nehru. I have been meeting our new members of parliament. There are over 700 of them between the two houses. I have noticed with great regret how few women have been elected. I suppose this is so in the state assemblies and councils also. I think we are very much to be blamed. It is not a matter of showing favor to anyone or even of injustice, but rather of doing something which is not conducive to this future growth of our country. I am quite sure that a real and a basic growth will only come when women have a full chance to play their part in the public life. Wherever they had this chance, they have as a whole done well, better if I may say so, than the average man. Our laws are man-made, a society dominated by men, and so most of us naturally takes a very lopsided view of the matter. We cannot objective because we have grown up in certain grooves of thought and actions. But the future of India will probably depend ultimately upon the woman than the man. Jawaharlal Nehru.
लकी, लकी,
यस
लकी,
सर।
हाँ, बताइए इसको क्या बोला गया है इसमें। पिछले 2 स्लाइड को थोड़ा सा समराइज कीजिए हिंदी में। लकी।
यस सर।
हम्म।
सर बेसिकली सर जब मतलब 90 जब फर्स्ट इलेक्शन हुआ था सर, उसमें जो सर 66 वुमेन आई गेस, यस सर। सर उसमें सर जो इलेक्शन हुआ था सर, जो अब मतलब लोअर हाउस के लिए, सर उसमें सर 66 वुमेन को मतलब सीट मिला गया था, और जिसमें से सर 19 को हाउस ऑफ पीपल के द्वारा इलेक्ट किया गया था।
हम्म।
और इसमें सर
क्या आप लोग
और
क्या
कुछ
सुन क्या रहे हैं? ये पूरा मयंक, जवाहरलाल नेहरू ने क्या बोला? सुन नहीं रहे हैं आप लोग? सुनो, मैं किसी से पूछूंगा बीच में। ये सत्यनारायण भगवान की पूजा नहीं हो रही कि बैठ के आप लोग ताली बजा रहे हैं। मयंक।
यस सर।
हाँ,
सर
जवाहरलाल नेहरू ने क्या बोला?
सर जवाहरलाल नेहरू ने बोला कि मुझे थोड़ा दुख होता है कि मैंने पूरे पार्लियामेंट को देखा, पूरे हाउसेस को देखा, लेकिन उसमें
हम्म।
700 लोग थे, लेकिन 700
हम्म।
में से सिर्फ कुछ ही महिलाएं हैं।
वेरी गुड। यस खुशी, गो अहेड। और सब लोग ध्यान से सुने, किसी से भी पूछूंगा हर एक स्लाइड के फिनिश होने के बाद। गो अहेड।
Okay, so the earlier that I have told you about the representation of women, now here I am going to explain you elaborately in the tabular form. That in first general election, that is on 1951, the number of women that were elected were 22. Then in second, 1957, it was 27. And then in third general election in 1962, it was increased to 34. Then from fourth general election 1967 to sixth general election 1977, it has been seen that the number of women elected has been decreased, like from 31 in fourth general election, then in fifth it is 22, and in sixth it is 19. Then in seventh general election 1980, it has been increased 28. Then in eighth 44, and ninth 1989 28, and so on to 14th general election 2004, that is 51. So from this representation, we can see that the number of women that were elected were gradually increasing.
यस
And
नेहा, अभी कितना है? 6018 नेहा,
Yes, sir.
द नंबर।
I have no idea, sir.
आज आज जब एक पेपर था तो एटलीस्ट कुछ पढ़ के आना चाहिए था। हाँ, कि जब आज प्रेजेंटेशन था तो सब लोगों को एटलीस्ट यू हैव टू इन्वॉल्व योरसेल्फ इनटू दिस। हाँ, ये कोई तरीका नहीं है। यस खुशी, गो अहेड।
okay, so this is the graphical representation of the same thing, of the percentage of elected women in each. So in first general election, that is in 1951, it was 4.4. Then, as I told you, that in fourth general election to sixth general election, it is seen that it has been decreased. But then again in 1970, in seventh general election to 14th general election, it has been increasing gradually. But the percentage, but it constitute a very small percentage. It has been increasing, but constitute a very small percentage. Then women contestant in general elections. Even though women enjoy equal political rights, very few of them are actually participating in elections. In sixth general election, out of total contestants, that is 2,439, only 70 candidates were women. And in 14th general election, out of total member of 5,435, only 355 were women. Though the number of women participating in elections may be increasing, but as I told you, they are continue to constitute a very small percentage of the total number of contestant. See, this table represents the total contestant of male and as compared to women. It is clearly visible that the women contestant is gradually increasing, but as compared to male contestant, they are very in small amount. Sir, shall I move further, or I need to explain this table again?
No, no, nothing, nothing. Simple, but you have to write, and but in examination, how you'll write? This is the important question. So at least you have to pick three, sixth, 10th, 11th एंड 14th इतना याद हो सकता है नॉट पूरा तो अगर आप लिखेंगे तो जरूर कॉपी पेस्ट हो जाएगा तो एग्जामिनेशन में लिखें जरूर लेकिन डिसकंटिन्यू करके लिखे वो तरीका होता है कि वी शुड लर्न बट we could not memorize each and everything so these are sixth लिख दो फिर 10th 11th फिर 14th लिख दो and why 14th इसलिए क्योंकि हमारा जो सिलेबस है वो 1990 तक ही है लेकिन हमें लगता है खुशी कि जब हम चार्ट लिखेंगे तो वो 19 इलेक्शन का भी हमें दे देना चाहिए लास्ट 2014 अब आप 98 99 के बाद आप सीधे आ सकते हैं 2019 ठीक है ना क्योंकि हमें कंटेम्प्रेरी देना चाहिए कहीं भी लास्ट
Okay, sir.
हाँ या गो अहेड गुड गो अहेड
So it all started with reservation. So there are various topics, various reasons where women have raised their voice. बहुत सारे reasons थे, but एक reason जो कि बहुत hotly debated रहा है, and that was and still pending and are in demand is the reservation, women reservation. So the position of women in Indian politics is becoming stronger day by day, with a strong female political figures in our country. To increase the participation of women in the parliament, women reservation bill was introduced in the upper and the lower house, but it is still pending in Lok Sabha despite its reintroduction. Women's reservation bill is a pending bill in the Parliament of India which proposes to amend the Constitution of India to reserve 33% seats in the lower house of the Parliament, Lok Sabha, and in all the state legislative assemblies for women. Reservation for women in Lok Sabha. Attempts to have seats reserved for women in Lok Sabha and state legislative assemblies have had a checkered legislative history. After all years of painstaking struggles by the women group, the bill for women reservation were earlier introduced in the parliament in 1996, then in 1998, and then in 1999 respectively, without being passed. The Constitution 81st Amendment Bill 1996 was introduced on 12 September 1996. Some of the significant features of the bill were as under. One third of the total number of seats filed by the direct elections in the House of People and legislative assemblies of the state shall be reserved for women. One third of the seats shall be reserved for women belonging to SCs and ST from amongst the seats reserved for the SCs and ST under the clause 1 of Article 330 and clause 1 of Article 332 of the Constitution. No reservation of seats in Lok Sabha for women from a state having less than 3 seats in the Lok Sabha. It same goes with the number of seats reserved for the SCs or the ST was less than 3 in any state. No reservation for women belonging to SC and the ST tribes was provided for in the state. The seats were to be reserved for women by rotation in the manner laid down by the law of parliament. No time limit up to which reservation for women was to continue. It did not provide for reservation of seats for women belonging to OBCs, other backward classes. It did not provide reservation of seats for women in the Rajya Sabha and Legislative Council of States. After intense debate and dissenting opinions, the bill was referred to a joint committee of the parliament, which is consist of 31 members from both the houses of parliament. And ये committee जो थी, it was chaired by Srimati Geeta Mukherjee, and she presented her report on 9th December 1996. And the committee in its report inter alia recommended as the word not less than one third occurring in the bill should be replaced with as nearly as maybe one third. The Legislative Assembly of National Capital Territory of Delhi should also be brought under the purview of the bill. The provision of the reservation of seats for women should also be made in respect of nominations made under Article 331 and 333 of the Constitution. The provision of reservation for women should cease to have effect on the expiry of a period of 15 years from the commencement of Constitution 81st Amendment Act 1996. The issue of extending the benefits of reservation to other backward classes (OBC) may be considered by the government at the appropriate time. The government should work out the modalities for providing reservation of seats for women in Rajya Sabha, and in legislative assembly councils, and bring out suitable legislature in this regard at the appropriate time. So basically, this bill was put forward in the parliament in three times. The Constitution 81st Amendment Bill 1996, as reported by Joint Committee of the Parliament, lapsed with the dissolution of 11th Lok Sabha. Thereafter, a similar bill, namely the Constitution 84th Amendment Bill 1998, was introduced on 14th December 1998. The bill the bill also lapsed on the dissolution of 12th Lok Sabha, and yet another attempt was made by introducing the Constitution 85th Amendment Bill 1999 in Lok Sabha on 23rd December 1999, but this bill also could not be pursued due to lack of consensus among the political parties. So, the reservation for women, this bill was lapsed
Yes,
three times
Khushi.
in
Yeah.
1996.
So this is the political aspect of that women's reservation bill. Got your point? And right now, what you are going to mention in this slides, in the coming slides?
So earlier I have
No, no, no,
told
no,
about
no.
the
Earlier that I know. After that, after this slide.
so in this I will tell you about the perceptions, like what one thing and what the other thing about the reservation
Okay.
of women.
I mean, different perception. Okay. And as a GE paper, because this is not pure political science paper, this is the GE paper, and हम जानते हैं शुरू से ही कि GE पेपर में हम लोग क्या करेंगे, अब यहाँ पे ये आना चाहिए हमें, a intense debate, a intense idea about the patriarchy mindset of Indian government or Indian male, कि भाई ये क्यों नहीं पास हुआ, यहाँ पे एक स्ट्रॉन्ग व्यू आना चाहिए आफ्टर डिस्कसिंग कि एवरीबडी इन पब्लिक दे आर प्रिज्यूमिंग दे आर with the women and they are with the girls, but still these bills are pending. और यहाँ पे आपको strong patriarchal mindset of the constitution, patriarchal mindset of our parliament members, and patriarchal mindset of our society we have to include here. Kusi, got a point?
Yes, sir,
Hmm?
getting.
Don't leave these strong words, because yes, this is a patriarchal society. And here, history comes to the fore. Got a point? Kusi, go ahead.
Yes, sir, getting. Okay. So moving ahead, earlier I have told you about the reservation of women, that how it has been dissolved by the parliament. Now I'm going to tell you about the different perception on the reservation for women. So the bill has evoked mixed reaction across the political spectrums, both inside the house as well as outside. So basically, some things that yes, 33% of reservation for women in Lok Sabha need to be provided by the legislative, and it be passed in its present form at the first available opportunity. And others are demanding quota to be fixed for the women belonging to backward sections of the society within this 33%. Otherwise, their contended benefit of this reservation is likely to be conquered by the women belonging to upper and the off sections of a society. So basically, one thinks that yes, 33% reservation should be initiated as soon as possible, and the others think that they should not 33% reservation, but quota system आना चाहिए, and दूसरे को and the other things that अगर reservation आता है तो उससे सिर्फ जो women है जो कि सिर्फ upper sections या फिर जो privileged हैं सिर्फ वो ही use कर सकते हैं. One party has stated that it is committed to the demand for the 33% of reservation for women. Then some parties, while maintaining that they are not opposed to women's reservation, contend that the interest of women from Dalit, backward classes, Muslims, and other religious minorities should be adequately protected. Others are of the view that if 33% of the reservation for women is added to already existing 22% of the SC and ST, then more than 55% of the seats in the parliament would be reserved. This would not be fair for other sections of the population. However, they favor making it mandatory for political parties to give 10% of election tickets to women. They also argue that if inadequacy of representation of the issue, reserving one third seats in a legislature would undoubtedly bestow special powers and privileges on the approximately 180 women who would make it to the parliament and many more to the state legislature on the strength of the quota system. It would also create new aspiration among women at large. However, the larger question is whether it will accurately empower ordinary women citizens.
Mayank, back. Previous slide. Yes, Mayank. Mayank. Khushi, you are too fast, little bit slow. Lucky.
सर बेसिकली सर इसमें सर मतलब जो वुमेन के लिए 33% रिजर्वेशन दिया गया था सर, उसमें उसके फेवर में सर और उनके मतलब विरुद्ध में मतलब पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज का क्या मतलब व्यू था जो लोकसभा में चल रहा था कि मतलब मिलना चाहिए या, और वो जो एक एक जो ये था द
Next slide. Next slide.
इसके बाद
Khushi, हाँ. Explain it.
सर जैसा कि सर 33% को रिजर्वेशन को सर फिक्स किया गया था सर, इसमें सर 22.5% जो हमारे जो शेड्यूल कास्ट और मतलब जो अनुसूचित जाति और जनजाति के लिए होते हैं उनमें उनमें से सर 55% जो सीट था वो सर ऑलरेडी पार्लियामेंट में रिजर्व था सर। और
Khushi,
सर नीचे
can you explain in Hindi?
ओके सर। सो इस मैंने स्लाइड में ये बताया सर कि जो रिजर्वेशन फॉर वुमेन का टॉपिक उठा था तो उसके रिलेटेड दो साइड्स के व्यू बन चुके थे। एक साइड जो था वो चाहता था कि हाँ 33% रिजर्वेशन जो है वुमेन के लिए आनी चाहिए, जैसी ही अपॉर्चुनिटी मिले हमें उस चीज को इनिशिएट कर देना चाहिए। एंड द अदर्स थिंग कि अगर 33% ऑफ रिजर्वेशन वुमेन के लिए आ जाएगी तो उससे वो वुमेन्स जो हैं वो जो अंडर प्रिविलेज्ड हैं या फिर जो प्रिविलेज्ड हैं या फिर जो हायर हैं वो उसका यूज करेंगी, बट बैकवर्ड क्लासेस की या फिर दलित्स या मुस्लिम और बाकी माइनॉरिटी रिलीजन्स की मुस्लिम वुमेन्स जो हैं वो प्रोटेक्ट नहीं रह पाएंगी।
So you have to study this article. Obvious, your department has called Nivedita. आप लोगों को इनका सुना था ना उस दिन आप लोगों ने? खुशी, मेरा स्क्रीन शेयर हो रहा है आप लोगों के साथ?
यस सर।
हाँ, तो अब ये हो गया, डू लाइक दिस, गॉट पॉइंट। अब ये आपका अधिक पॉलिटिक्स में जा रहा है, डिबेट, डिस्कशंस। उसके बाद ये सारी चीजें आनी चाहिए। अगर आप उसके बाद आपका काम, जब आप नोट्स बनाएंगे आप लोग, या तो आपको कुछ ऐसे पॉइंट्स को लिखना पड़ेगा। और ये आर्टिकल है, इसका अगर सिंपली आप फर्स्ट पेज भी पढ़ के आप ढेर सारा कुछ समझ सकते हैं। और ये सबके लिए अवेलेबल, इट्स नॉट फॉर मी, इट्स अवेलेबल फॉर एवरीवन। सो एटलीस्ट डू सम दिस काइंड ऑफ वर्क आल्सो, खुशी। ठीक है, ये दीज आर द एक्सप्लेनेटरी वर्क कि ये है। लेकिन अब हम डिबेट वाले पॉइंट में आएंगे। और आपका वो पॉलिटिकल डिबेट काफी बढ़िया था, लेकिन वी मूव दिस टू द सोशल डिबेट आल्सो। पॉलिटिकल तो डिबेट अच्छा था। और देखिए हम यहाँ पे ऑब्वियस दिस इज आर वेरी we have to introspect us. We passed each and every bill without full attendance of parliament. हम पास कर लेते हैं। some bill passed, some law came through the Supreme Court, but what about the women bill? ये तो आज की गवर्नमेंट के पास पूरी मेजोरिटी है, फिर भी ये बिल पास नहीं हो पा रहा है। और इसके पहले भी कुछ गवर्नमेंट्स के पास बिल विल पावर था, लेकिन बिल पास नहीं हुआ। तो वी हैव टू क्वेश्चन, पॉलिटिकल साइंस में क्वेश्चन भी उठाया जाता है। तो आप सब लोगों को जब आप लिखिए, तो दीज आर नॉट ओनली द फैक्चुअल इंफॉर्मेशन, वी हैव टू सम एनालाइज आल्सो, देन विल क्रिएट अ aura about your answer and a good understanding about your टॉपिक। और ये हर एक हिंदी और इंग्लिश दोनों में मिल जाएगा आप लोगों को। सो डोंट वरी अबाउट द इंग्लिश और हिंदी। खुशी, गो हेड। गुड।
Okay, sir. So, from the above slide, we have discussed that how the two sides think about the reservation of women. So, the question arises that has the presence of 500 plus male legislators in Parliament empowered the men of India? Have these MPs facilitate the growth of men's freedom from abuse and harassment? Freedom from hunger and malnutrition? Do men feel secure and safe in today's India's? If most men in this country have not benefited from the preponderant presence of male parliamentarians, why should we naively believe that 180 women in parliament will change the fate of women in India? Then, moving towards the Hindu Code Bill. So it was it was initiated by Jawaharlal Nehru in 1950s, in early 1950s. The process of enactment of Hindu Code Bill, a measure demanded by women since 1930s. A committee under chairmanship of B.N. Rao, the constitutional expert who prepared the first draft of the Constitution of India, had already gone into the matter and submitted a draft code in 1944. Another committee chaired by B.R. Ambedkar, the law marriage, upheld monogamy, gave women the right to divorce, maintenance and inheritance, and treated dowry as Sriran or women's property. A strong opposition from conservative sections of the society and hesitation on the part of some serious Congress leaders, including President Rajendra Prasad, led to the bill being postponed despite strong support from the majority of congressmen and from women activists and social reformers. Ultimately, four sections of bill were passed: the Hindu Marriage Act, the Hindu Succession Act, the Hindu Minority and Guardianship Act, the Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Act. The extension of the legal rights to Hindu women was not sufficient, but it was a big step forward. This is seen from the stiff opposition encountered by the government in its attempt to legal extend rights in the case of other religious communities. The Shah Bano case is a very good example. In 1985, about 40 years after Hindu law was reformed, the Supreme Court granted a pittance as maintenance to Shahbanu, a divorced Muslim woman. There was a furor among the conservative Muslim sections, and sufficient pressure was put on the Rajiv Gandhi government for it to wield and introduce a bill to negotiate the Supreme Court's judgment. It is no doubt easy and even necessary to castigate the government for its cowardliness, but it should be remembered that while the opposition brought lakhs into the streets, the supporters of Shah Bano could muster only 100. While criticizing Nehru for not pushing through a more radical civil for Hindus and for not passing a uniform civil code applicable to all citizens, it should be remembered that while Nehru did face opposition, he could also muster considerable support because among Hindus, the process of social reform had gone much further than among Muslims, as evidenced by Shah Bano case 30 years later. The right to vote has been taken very seriously, and women are keen voters. But in other respects, especially in regards to right to inheritance of parental property, legal rights are by and large not claimed. The custom of patrilocal residence is very largely responsible for this. This is also one reason women have refused to give up dowry, because it is their only chance of getting a share of their parental property. The legal right to divorce has been increasingly used. Women since independence. So basically, there have been several movements that were initiated by movement in which they have raised voice and which shows women empowerment. But here in my slide, I have put forward only four movements, like Chipko movement, the Self-Employed Women Association movement, the Progressive Organization of Women, and the Nirbhaya movement. So, modern India refers to the period after independence where education plays an important role in every sphere of life. Women were educated, but with modernity came more violence. Movements like Chifku movement and women, the women standing with their arms around trees and roaring to protect them from being cut. There were reasons why did women came in the forefront to fight. They lost control of cultivation, livestock, children, and other resources as a result of recurring floods and landslides. Then, for coming forward towards self-employed women association movement in Ahmedabad, led by Ila Bhatt, which was a sort of pioneering argument of women's trade union movement that began in 1972. This was one such landmark in the history of contemporary India women's movement. Women were brought together by their shared experience, such as low earning, harassment at home, by contractors and by police, poor work conditions, non recognition of their labor, to list just a few. Apart from collective bargaining, the movement strove to improve working conditions through training. The Progressive Organization of Women. It was organized and then developed in Hyderabad in the year 1974. It was a movement towards organizing women against gender oppressive structure in society, namely the sexual division of labor and the culture that rationalized this discrimination. The organization promoted the ideology of equality and opposed the economic dependence of women on men. The Nirbhaya movement. It was both brutal and peaceful protests which erupted and
Okay,
people.
Nirvaya, it's good. Before Nirvaya, if we are talking about, yes, these are the four case studies, but when we are talking about the women movement, it's necessary to the first major, like POW and the previous one, these are the organization, these are organizational movement. One major movement, Chipko movement that you have already included, and the one was the Roop Kanwar Sati incident, Sati, that I think 1987. 1980, do you know about the Roop Kanwar? जानते हैं? नहीं.
No, sir.
यस, रूप कंवर एक ऑब्वियस जोधपुर राजस्थान में एक इंसिडेंट हुआ था, और जहाँ पे रूप कंवर ने अपने पति के साथ चिता पे जला लिया था, जैसे कि पहले हम लोग सती प्रथा देखते थे। और वो एक जगह है राजस्थान में, वहाँ पे उन्होंने क्या एग्जैक्ट मैं नाम बोल रहा हूँ, कौन सी जगह है वो मैं अभी जस्ट वो वो उनके शायद शेखावत, माल सिंह शेखावत उनके हस्बैंड का नाम था, एंड द एज ऑफ 18 उनको सती होना, रूप कंवर कांड इसको नाम हुआ था, राजपूत वुमेन थी। और मयंक पता है?
ये सर कुछ ऐसा हुआ था कि हस्बैंड ओल्ड थे इसलिए उनकी डेथ हो गई थी, और जो
अरे
लेडी
कुछ
थी
नहीं,
वो
बस
यंग थी।
कुछ भी कहानी बना दो।
ऐसा
हाँ,
हुआ था।
अरे ठीक है, यहाँ पे तो क्या ओल्ड हस्बैंड के साथ यंग लेडी का डेथ हो जाएगा? यहाँ पे डेथ और राइट की बात नहीं हो रही, यहाँ पे मूवमेंट की बात हो रही है। मिस्टर मयंक, मयंक हो ना? हाँ मयंक, अभी दिख नहीं रहा है मुझे। One point. So the issue is the movement, and the movement and organization. If you are talking about the movement, that was the major movement. उसके बाद इंडिया में एक मूवमेंट और चला था अगेंस्ट द डाउरी, when people are very young, kids, not young, it's a kid, young तो अभी आप लोग हैं, किड्स होंगे उस समय। गाजियाबाद में एक मूवमेंट चला था अगेंस्ट द डाउरी, कि जहाँ पे डाउरी की बात आती थी, वहाँ पे गर्ल्स जो है वो शादी के लिए मना करती थी। याद याद कीजिए कि, और वो उस समय न्यूज में काफी चला था, तो वो ना डाउरी के अगेंस्ट एक मूवमेंट चला था, और उसमें हमारे कॉलेज के एक स्टूडेंट भी थी, और आज भी मैं उसके टच में हूँ, और हमने पढ़ाया है उसको उसने भी यही काम किया था द सेम डे ऑफ मैरिज दो ही न्यू that guy but unfortunately due to the dowry उसको पता चला कि उसने फादर से पैसे लिए हैं और पैसे लिए हैं और पैसे लिए हैं तो उसने द डे ऑफ द मैरिज ही could not attend her marriage और उसके बाद हुआ उसका नाम एक्चुअली नाम में मुझे थोड़ा सा मैं भूल जाता हूँ नाम याद आ जाएगा इन बिटवीन और हम पिंकी सिर्फ उसका नाम था और इट्स अ रिपोर्ट वो हमारे कॉलेज में जब ये सारा हुआ उसने मुझे फ़ोन किया कि सर मैंने ये किया क्योंकि उस समय मैं वुमेन मूवमेंट पढ़ाता था थर्ड ईयर में तो 2 साल बाद थर्ड ईयर के बाद हम बोले चलिए अच्छा ये तो आपने अच्छा किया और लेकिन सर आप इम्पैक्ट आपका था आपने सर बताया था ये सब चीज़ें तो ठीक है आप बोले अच्छा है व्हाट यू फील सर बोले कि नहीं आई रियली फील वेरी गुड कि अगर अभी से ये बात है तो फिर लाइफ में प्रॉब्लम दो वी नो ईच अदर लेकिन ये प्रॉब्लम थी तो उस समय एक डाउरी मूवमेंट और दूसरा सती रूप कंवर कांड सो इफ यू टॉक अबाउट द वुमेन मूवमेंट इन इंडिया सती दैट द फर्स्ट मूवमेंट चिपको मूवमेंट दैट वाज अ वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग और उसके बाद निर्भया मूवमेंट हुआ और लेकिन इन बिटवीन दीज आर द टू इम्पॉर्टेंट aspect of the women movement in India and Roop Kaur Sati Kand that was a phenomenal incident or that took place in 1987 and new in Rajasthan a new kind of energy a new kind of idea emerged in deep rooted village community और बेटी बचाओ उसके बाद वही बेटी बचाओ बेटी पढ़ाओ एक्सेट्रा जो सब शुरू हुआ वो एक इंडिया में क्योंकि उसके पहले तो हमें इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन करना एग्रीकल्चर करना हम इन सब सोशल इश्यूज के बारे में काफ़ी कुछ अधिक सोच नहीं पाते थे दैट वाज द टर्निंग पॉइंट ऑफ इंडियन वुमेन मूवमेंट में वो टर्निंग पॉइंट था ठीक है इट्स व्हाट नेक्स्ट खुशी
Yes, sir. So I got it that I should have mentioned that too, which I didn't. So I'm sorry for that. Okay, so these were the
इसमें
Indian
सॉरी
women.
क्या अगर आप ही सब बोलेंगे तो टीचर को सैलरी क्यों मिलती है खुशी हाँ
Yes, sir.
हाँ ऑब्वियस है आई एम हियर टू एनहांस यू आगे तो बढ़िए आप लोग तो पीछे ही रहते हैं हाँ
Okay,
ठीक है
so okay.
यस यस यस
So these were the India women movements, and right now, if I have to tell the current contemporary women movement that have been taken place, so it is very evident the
अब वो
Shaheen
कल
Bagh.
अब वो कल
Okay,
ठीक है ना
sir.
अभी और आपका कितना भी तो काफी होगा अभी आपका वो तो वुमेन
So
रिपोर्ट वगैरह तो
अभी
है
सर
अभी
नेक्स्ट हाँ यस सर नेक्स्ट
हाँ
टॉपिक ही मेरा ऑब्जेक्टिव इंडियन रिपोर्ट का है
हाँ
यस.
तो इसको हम कंटिन्यू करेंगे अभी ये तो काफ़ी अच्छा रहा इतना इसमें बस यही है कि थोड़ा फैक्चुअल है एनालिटिकल होना चाहिए था और एनालिटिकल कैसे तो वर्क ऑन दिस खुशी इस पे थोड़ा सा रात में बैठ के वर्क कीजिए जैसे निविता मेनन है जैसे सुबीरा जायसवाल हैं और मैंने और भी आपको कुछ अनुपमा रॉय फिर अनुपमा अनुपमा RAO राव अनुपमा राव इनका आप क्लिक कीजिएगा तो इनके व्यूज मिलेंगे वुमेन मूवमेंट के बारे में या फिर तो आप इनको एक जगह कलेक्ट कीजिए करीब 5-7 अच्छे व्यूज को और आप जब एक्सप्लेन कीजिए फैक्चुअल यहाँ पे एनालिटिकल व्यू हो जाएगा ठीक है ना खुशी तो यू इनकलकेट दिस काइंड ऑफ राइटिंग एट द एंड कि आप डिस्कशन डिबेट्स होना चाहिए इस पेपर में ये पेपर फैक्चुअल नहीं है कि जहाँ पे आप लोगों ने फैक्चुअल लिख दिया तो बात खत्म हो जाती है ठीक है
यस एक्चुअली सर आई टुक इट वेरी सीरियस जब आपने वो बोला था कि टेबुलर एंड ग्राफिकल रिप्रेजेंटेशन होना चाहिए आंसर में तो मैंने अपनी स्लाइड्स में उसको ज्यादा इंपॉर्टेंस दी.
लेकिन वो फैक्चुअल हो गया ना गॉट पॉइंट वो दैट वाज द फैक्चुअल हाँ
यस सर यस गेटिंग.
और लेकिन आपने सोर्सेज को नहीं चेंज किया डिस्पाइट आई हैव सेंट यू सो मेनी बुक्स लेकिन आपने उन बुक्स में से किसी को अपने सोर्स में
नो नो सर
नहीं
आई
इंक्लूड
एडेड
किया
मतलब यस बीच बीच में आई हैव एडेड देम.
हाँ हाँ तो आप ऐड कीजिए उसको और ढेर सारा है ढेर सारी चीजें हैं तो ठीक है वेल एंड गुड समझ में आ रहा है आप लोगों को 2-3 कमेंट लेना चाहिए और ये आज ही रिकॉर्ड